So now we need to get displaying these fishes underneath our menu so we can see exactly what we've got going on the sidebar here. So let's open up, what do we got? Our app.js file. Well, that's not it, app.js. And we're going to go right below this header and we're going to give ourselves a UL with a class of fishes. And inside of that, we're going to need a whole bunch of list items, one for each fish. Now, if you've been listening, you'll know that it's probably not a good idea just to loop over all the fishes and render it out right inside of this app.js, because we want to make reusable components that I could use anywhere in my app. I don't just want this fish component that we're going to be building. I don't want it to be so tightly bound to this app.js. I want it to be reusable. If I ever wanted to put a single fish in a pop-up or render it out even to an email or anything like that, I would like to be able to move it anywhere in my app. So what are we going to do? We're going to make a component. Good. So we'll go to our components folder. We'll create a new file and we'll call that fish, capital F with .js. And let's open up order, just copy, paste, we'll make a class, fish. And then from this, we are going to return a div with the single class of single-fish. And then inside of that, let's just give ourselves a fish emoji. Good. Now we can go into our app.js and let's go ahead and import that. So go down here, import fish from, fish. Good. And we can go ahead and start using a fish tag inside of our render. So, oops, this closed itself. Now we want to do something like this, fish, and that should render out. Ooh, there we go. Renders out a fish. And it's funny, like the fish tag kind of even looks like a fish. Isn't that neat? So ideally we want to have 9 fish tags for every single one, and that's going to render out 9 different fish. So the question now is, how do you loop over all of the fishes that we have? And JSX is kind of neat or weird, or I don't know, but it doesn't have any logic built into it. So JSX doesn't have if statements, it doesn't have looping, it doesn't have conditionals, none of the stuff that you're used to from a templating language, it doesn't exist in JSX. So if you want to do any sort of logic inside of JSX, then you just need to use regular old JavaScript. So what's the best way to loop over something in JavaScript? Likely you want an array, and you likely want to either use .map or .foreach or whatever it is that you need. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop over all of our fish, and for each fish that we have, we'll render out a fish tag. So let's get rid of this here. Now our state, let's load some sample fishes. Let's go to app. Our state is an object, and you can't map over an object because a map is for an array. So what we need to do first is use object.keys. So we'll give ourselves a set of curly brackets that tells JSX we are using JavaScript. Then we'll say object.keys, and we'll say this, which is the component, .state, which is our state, obviously, .fishes. And if you've never used object.keys before, let me show you how it works real quick. So I'm going to go and make sure that we have my app selected. We have our state with all of our fish in it. Now, if I say object or let's say $R, that gives us our app, $R.state, that gives us our state, and $R.state.fishes gives us our state. Now, if I wanted to loop over that, I need to wrap that in an object.keys. And that will give us all of the keys. So fish 1, fish 2, fish 3, fish 4, and so on. And that will allow us to loop over every single fish that we have. So let's do that, object.keys, and then we put a .map on there. And for each one, we're going to get a key. Each key is going to be fish 1, fish 2, fish 3, et cetera, et cetera. And for each one, let's just return a paragraph tag with the key inside of it. Now, whenever there is something in state, we will map over it. Now, if nothing's showing up, click the load sample. Bam, now we've got every single fish being rendered out. Now, before we even get into rendering out our fish component, we start to get this error. Each child in an array or iterator must have a unique key prop. So, that's interesting. And if I were to go to my app component and open it up, you're going to see that we have all of these paragraph tags, each which have a little bit of data in it from React. So there's a problem here because in order for React to be fast, it needs to be able to quickly get to the component that is updated or just the piece of the component that is updated. So if I, for some reason, wanted to change fish 5 to fish Wes, then React needs to know how to quickly get to fish 5 and update just that little piece of text. That's what makes React nice and quick. Now, if you do not give some sort of unique identifier to fish 5, then React is apparently it could still work, but it's going to be much slower and it's going to start being cranky at you, throwing this error. So the solution to that is you have to give a property called key, and this is a built-in React thing, and you have to give it a key of anything that is unique. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it is unique. And almost always when you're querying a database, you get some sort of unique identifier back. In our case, we can use key because that's unique, right? So the key equals key. And that looks good. It's no longer whining at us about the key, but we obviously don't want to render out a paragraph tag. We want to render out a fish tag. So I'll get rid of that entirely. We'll render out a fish tag, and then the fish tag also needs that key equals key. And open that up, load some sample fishes. Now we see for every single fish that we have, we're rendering one out. And also if I were to refresh and we were to add one ourselves, then it will render out a fish tag because that just got added to state. Now the question is, how do I get the information from state over to this fish component? Because once I'm in here, there's no data available to me. I can't access state unless it gets passed in via props, right? How does data get anywhere? Props. So we're going to go over here and we're going to pass that entire object via a prop. So we'll call it details. Again, I just made that up. That's not anything specific to React. The details equals, and we normally want to do something like this. This.state.fishes.fish1 or fish2 or fish3 or fish4. And the way that we can make that dynamic is by using square bracket syntax and referencing the key value on there. So this.state.fishes.fish1, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when we go to our React DevTools and search for a fish key, oh, I guess I got to load some fishes in there first. And now if we search for a fish key, you're going to see that every single fish component, if you click on any one of them, they all have a prop called details. And then inside of that, we have description, image, name, price, status, and we can use that data to start rendering it on out. So let's go over to our fish.js. And from this, we are going to return not a div, what am I thinking? A list item with the class of menu fish. Sorry, I goofed that up. And then inside of that, we want a whole bunch of stuff. We want an image tag where the image is going to be equal to, normally you might think you do something like this. It's going to be this.props.fish.image, right? Let's try that. So go ahead, load some sample fishes, and it doesn't work. If I were to inspect element, you see our list items. Inside of that, I got an image, and the source is actually this.props.fish.image. So how do you set a source to be a property of the object? Well, you don't need the quotes here. You leave those out and just set it directly to that. Same with the alt tag. That can be this.props.fish.name. And give that a save. We'll load up some sample fishes. Oh, got an error. Cannot read the property image of undefined. So we're trying to access image of, oh, it's not fish. What is it? Well, if you don't know what the variables are, you go to your React DevTools, you search for a fish. Oh, and it's obviously not going to show up because it's breaking. So let me reload it here when it's not broken. Then try search for a fish. It's not this.props.fish, it's this.props.details. So we'll switch out .fish with .details. Load some sample fishes, and now you see all of the images of the different fish showing up. And at this point, it's simply just a templating game. So let's give ourselves an H3 with a class of fish name. Inside of that, we'll give ourselves this.props.details.name. There we go, Pacific halibut lobster. One thing that's starting to bug me is this.props.details.whatever. Are you a little bit out of breath after typing that? One thing we can do is we can go up here below the render, above our return, is we can make some shorter variables by saying things like this. Const image equals, this.props.details.image. And then what that will do is it'll give us just a shorter image variable. Same thing with this.props.details.name. We can make that into a name variable by saying const name equals this.props.details.name. And that's going to be much shorter. It's going to work exactly the same. However, if you want to put on your hotshot pants, we can go one step further because it's likely that you're going to have a whole bunch of these before your render, and that starts to get pretty gnarly. We can take it one step further by using ES6 destructuring, which allows you to set multiple variables in a single shot. So we'll say const image name equals this.props.details, and that will take this.props.details.image and put it into a variable called image, and this.props.details.name and put it into a variable called name, etc., etc. And that allows us to destructure out a lot of little variables as quickly as possible. So what are the other properties we need from here? We need the image, the name, the price, the description, and the availability, or the status. That's what it was called. Then we can go down here. We got our H3. And inside of that, we want a span with a class of price. And we're going to put the price inside of that. So load some sample fishes. Oh, shoot. Now it's giving us the value in cents. How could we fix that? Helpers. Remember, we have this helper file, which a format price function that takes in cents and returns formatted. So all we have to do here is import format price from helpers. And then we'll go down here and format price, just wrap our price inside of our template tag. And that should give us some nicely formatted dollar signs. Beautiful. See the benefit of keeping everything in cents until you actually have to display it, because you can always display it in dollars and cents, but it's so nice to be able to keep everything in just cents at the end of the day. So down here, we'll just put the description. Actually, it was called desk, not description. So sorry about that. Change that. Working pretty nicely. And then finally down here, we're going to give ourselves a button. And that button is just going to say add to cart. And we're going to come back to that button once we figure out how to actually add it to our order. But right now, we just need to make sure that we're able to load in some fishes and they will display no problem for us. And then pretty soon what we're going to do is when you click on add to cart, that button is going to add it to our order, which is in the middle here.